want to turn to you and your experience. I mean, within the Khudam structure here, you're in charge of the sports on a national level. How have you find it in terms of actually encouraging people to engage in sports? Are they willing to do it, or maybe they're not really that they don't really want to get involved, or what's it been like?
No, I think they're absolutely willing to get involved. I think what you have to do is put a structure in place where you have an organization and you have a plan whereby people can get involved. What we've done in the United States is incorporated Brotherhood Through Fitness campaign, where each of our local chapters gets together on a monthly basis to have one sports activity.
Right.
And it includes everyone. So with that, not only do you get everyone together, build the bonds of brotherhood, but you also take part in physical fitness activity and you promote health and amongst the membership. So I think to answer your question, people are ready to get involved. They just need the means. And I think if we can help them guide them to that area, we should be okay.
Okay. All right. So let's get some more views from the audience members. You've heard what the panel are talking about here. And do you agree with what they're saying? Is it easy to get involved in sports? How have you found it? Let's get some points of view from over here. Do you want to hand it over to someone? Anyone want to add something? How do you find it? Are you at college at the moment? Or?
Yes. Currently, I'm going to university second year. I think if you really sports is something. Being I moved from Pakistan, some years back, and the thing is, first thing I realized, what really connected me to the United States was sports.
Right. Okay.
So first thing I learned nothing about anything, just sports. So the first thing that really got connected was football, or American football, we call it. Over there, it's football. You really don't play with your foot, but it's called football. We had an argument earlier, but.
Yeah, I've had to learn the difference between football and soccer over here.
So
I'm getting used to it, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's one thing. But, to the point that at a young age, the amount of, everywhere you go, you just talk about sports. You're talking about your fantasy leagues, whatever, points and stuff like that. It's a great
way to actually connect with people, isn't it? Because then you have something
in
common with them.
Definitely. Yeah. It's something in common. You go out every Sunday, you play with your friends. You get to see new people, you meet new people. You create a bond between them, so it really helps you with your social life as well. Okay. And you get make new friends and hang out later.
All right, fantastic. Let's get some more points of view. Anyone else want to add something to this?
Right. When it comes to parents and their kids in sports, personally I've seen many different types of approaches that parents have taken. One approach is that parents would get their kids to not play sports for the fear of injury, because as especially American football and any other sport in that matter, there's a really big risk of injury. So being a protective parent, they're more hesitant to get their kids involved in sports. They would rather have their kids focus on more productive things in their eyes, such as education. So they would probably focus more on their children to be focused on education. And I've also seen parents that, because being a parent of a person who's involved in sports takes a big commitment for the parents, because in the youth, the parents are the sole responsible for taking their kids to the practices, taking their kids for the games. It's exactly a very big commitment. So. These are the two aspects that I've seen in sports.
All right, fantastic. Let's get some more points of view. Anyone else want to add something to this? So what's your view in terms of the role between parents and kids in terms of sports and getting them active?
I know going from parents not taking it seriously, I know from my cousin's point of perspective, he plays football and basketball,
right,
and he's very active in that. And I know his parents aren't really too happy about it. But I think parents need to see it from their point of view, how important it is to them and what it does for them. And it also, for them, it builds confidence, and it's where they feel at peace. So I think parents should try to understand it from their point of view, so that maybe they could take it more seriously.
Okay. So maybe parents aren't doing enough to actually connect with the kids and see how important it is for them.
I think that's
valid point of view. Let's get one more point of view from the audience.
Sure. I mean, in my personal perspective, for me, there's two different aspects. There's one person who is extremely active, extremely enthusiastic, and then there's another parenting issue where the kid is not active. But for me, I was super enthusiastic to play football, but the problem that I had was my parents weren't familiar with the sport. They, coming from England or Pakistan, are familiar with soccer or something else. And we won the regional championship game, which we hadn't done in 10 years in the school's history, but they didn't realize the significance of it. So for me, it was just not like they were. They are supportive in a way, but they just didn't understand how significant it was to me and how much I valued it. So
That's a valid point.
it's just understanding.
Moving back to the panel, you've heard a lot of views. What can you take away from that? You think that's relevant to people across the US? Do they feel the same way?
I think before we bash the parents too much, I think we need to think about their perspective. They're coming from overseas. They don't have the same perspectives that we do growing up in this Western culture. But one thing that we can stress to them is try to provide them the information. I think we're in a unique situation here in the United States where everything that we do athletically is in line with academics as well. When you play sports in high school,
right,
not only are you playing sports, but you're also getting an education at the same time. There's countries in the world where if you're deemed an athlete, they would pull you out of school and just train you for that specific sport.
Okay.
So you have no recourse if you don't succeed. So I think we need to look at it that way, and we also need to inform our parents that sports isn't all that bad. We're also getting an education at the same time, and that falls upon the athlete, the student as well. To be good in school, don't lose track of other parts of life, so the parents could be more inclined to support you in that role.
I mean, Kush, there's going to be parents watching this program, and I'm sure they're probably thinking, do you know what, my kids enjoy sports, I know they do, but I don't want to push them too far because, I mean, like we'll mention later on in the program, if you're a professional athlete, you can only play for a certain amount of years. Like we said before, only like 2% actually make it. It's very, very risky in that respect, and so parents have to look at the bigger picture. So aren't they right in to do that and actually say, do you know what, make sure you have your education because that's the most important thing?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was telling these guys, I mean, like, I played basketball my whole life and I was obsessed with it. And till I was 14, I was convinced I was going to play in the NBA. Then I realized that, you're 6-foot power forward who can't dunk is not going to play in the NBA. But, my parents obviously always encouraged that, but they always said, go to school, do well, get good grades, go to college. So again, it's a balancing act. It's about, fostering a child's interest, whether it be sports or whatever it may be, like, encouraging that, but also keeping them focused on the bigger picture, like you said, which comes back to education and hard work. And so, I think it both can be done. And I think, like the point I made before, a lot of it is a generational thing, and us being the first generation to bridge that gap between East and West, when we become that role of parents, we'll understand the importance of sports and, in terms of somebody made the point about confidence and identity, and I mean, there's a lot to that. I mean, I hope that the digital age doesn't completely wipe out that benefit of sports.
Yeah, that'd be a real shame to lose that. Osman, just turning to you, I just want to focus on one point. We're talking about parents obviously see sports as just maybe a recreational thing, but in fact, actually, people use sports to stay away from other sort of negative influences. I mean, if they're regularly training after school or college, that stops them from just hanging about on the street. So, isn't that one of the advantages of sports, maybe?
I think that's a huge advantage, especially with some of the negative influences in society. As a public school teacher, I see a lot of those influences that are out there. A lot of distractions that can take, anybody away from their moralistic, viewpoints. But and sports is a great thing to turn on and lean on. Personally, I know I experienced that, where it also gave me a sense of identity. Being a Muslim raised in a Western society where sports is so much of our culture, but also within sports, there's other cultures. Right. Being a basketball player on a high school team, there's the culture of, being a jock per se. And with being a jock, you're almost, it's almost per se to have a girlfriend or to mingle with the cheerleaders or, to be at parties. It's social status. It's a social status.
Ingrained social status.
So how do you combat that? So there's a lot of pressures that go along with playing sports.
Okay. I hope you just turning to you finally. I mean, we're going to be wrapping up this half of the program, but we're talking about the sort of practices that happen within the sporting world, and as Muslims going into sports teams, sometimes there's practices, I don't know, about sharing locker rooms, there might be issues there, or celebrations after matches, people going out for drinks and things like that. Obviously, a lot of people must face these issues and must be awkward sometimes to be in those situations. What would your advice be maybe to youngsters growing up in that environment?
I don't think you can look at sports independently of your life, day-to-day life. So spiritually, if you have morals that you live by day to day, you can't sway away when you're talking about sports. So the way I think about it is that, is this what my morals would, Is this along my morals? If not, then I won't go about those ways. And I think it's fine for you to say, no, my religion or my faith doesn't allow me to drink. And let your teammates know. I think every 99% of the time, you're going to be okay with that. The teammates, your coaches, everyone's going to be okay with that. So as long as you're upfront about it, you don't hide away, you don't shy away from that, the fact of who you are, you should be okay.
That's fantastic. All right, okay, so thanks for your input. Stay with us. We're going to carry on after this. We're going to take a short break, but in part 2 of the program, we're going to be looking at the sports industry as a whole, looking at the sort of the lives and the careers of professional sports players. What kind of pressures are they under, and what are the difficulties that they might face? We're going to take a short break, but stay with us for part 2 of Real Talk.
An interlingual channel promoting interfaith dialogue. Worldwide, live and interactive. On satellite television and the internet. This is MTA International.
And now an important announcement. All broadcasts of MTA International in Urdu, English and MTA Al Arabiya are being transmitted on the internet via web streaming and can be watched anywhere in the world by directly accessing MTA's own website, www.mta.tv. MTA streaming is a service initiated by Hadrat Khalifatul Masih, may Allah strengthen his hand, a few years ago. It is exclusively provided by MTA International for its viewers across the globe. Although this service can be accessed through other Jamaat sites, for the convenience of use and better results, please ensure to use MTA's official website, www.mta.tv. Also, your comments, concerns, any reports of non-availability, and the true user data would reach us quicker and more accurately if you are using www.mta.tv to watch MTA. So whether you're at home, the office, a hotel room, or on the go, remember you can watch MTA 24/7 by logging on to www.mta.tv. That is www.mta.tv.
Welcome back to the show. This is part 2 of the program. Here in the US, where we'll be discussing sports, we're looking at the whole issue of sports in society, the whole culture of sports. And in this part of the program, we're going to be looking at sports in terms of the actual professional element of it. Why are so many of the professional people shown in the media in a negative way? What are the pressures they have to deal with? What are some of the issues as well? So that's what we're going to be discussing right about now. Smart Sahib, let me just turn to you first of all. We talked about that there's only a few number of people actually make it into the sports world professionally. Right. And do you think there's an element of disappointment for those people who try to do it and then don't actually make it? And how do they deal with that?
I'm sure there is an element of disappointment because if you know, like we were talking about before, you put so much time, energy, dedication, focus on that being your ultimate goal. I'm sure there is some disappointment, but I feel like life does teach you how to face adversity. So in every sport, be it swimming, basketball, football, you're faced with those adversities as you're going through this. So, on one end, yes, there's disappointment, but I do feel like athletes are prepared for disappointment and how to face disappointment. That's one of the pros of playing sports. So yes, there is disappointment, but on the flip end, you learn so much from sports, be it the team environment, and I'm sure, like Hibby was saying, education and sports is hand in hand in the society. So throughout that all, you may be earning a college scholarship, you may be given that opportunity to major in something that a fallback. So right. I think there are fallbacks built in there with sports that they have an opportunity to take it other way.
Okay. I mean, that's when we touched about the money involved. How much money is involved in terms of these players? What are the sort of incomes that they're earning? They're multi-million wages on there.
Right, and we're speaking in America, we're talking multi-millions, and in Europe as well. Soccer players who get paid a phenomenal amount. I've talked to European players that have played professional basketball in Europe. Okay. We may not be talking to millions, but there's still enough to make a decent living. So there's avenues out there to make multi-million dollar contracts.
And do you think they're actually being paid too much? Because I mean, these people are projected to start superstardom. 1 minute they're nothing, the next minute they're the face you see all over the place, and how do they actually learn how to deal with that money and the sort of pressures that come along with that? It's a whole change in lifestyle, isn't it?
It's debatable. You can go back and forth. Are they paid too much? But if you really look at, one perspective to look at it is, an average NFL player only plays 3 to 4 years. Right. So if you look at it that standpoint, he's only got that small window of opportunity to make as much money as he can, and he devoted a whole lifetime, years into specializing in that skill, building his body to be a professional athlete. So he's got that opportune time to make that money. So if you look at it from that perspective, maybe they don't, because you compare it to a doctor who works for 30, 40 years. They're about breaking even if you look at it that way.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, I want to get the audience perspective on this, because I think it's quite an emotional point for some people. They see these athletes and they're running around, they're playing sports. I enjoy doing that, but they're getting paid all these millions of dollars for it. So what do you think about that? Are they being paid too much? Should they be paid too much?
I definitely feel that they're being paid too much. I think there needs to be a limit on how much these athletes can make. I agree with the point that they're playing temporarily, so they should try to make as much as they possibly can now, because their time period may be only 4 years, 3 years, 5 years. However, at the same time, what type of message are we sending out to our society? I look at it as a student sitting in a school, and how are you going to motivate as a teacher or as a parent that child to go into other careers, such as being a lawyer or being a doctor or an engineer or a psychologist or at some other type of field other than sports, when that child is looking at the facts that are on the table. And those facts are, I can become a basketball player, a soccer player, or a football player and make millions, or I can become a social worker and only make $30,000 a year.
Right.
So what type of message are we really sending out to the children? Okay. So I definitely agree that they're making too much.
Okay, valid point. Can I get a point from you as well? You haven't had a...
on how much they're paid, I think they're worth as much as someone is willing to pay for them. And if you look at it from the point of how much money they actually bring in, the amount of money they're paid compared to the money they're bringing in is not really, it's a very small amount. They should actually be making more money if you base it off that fact
So you're
alone.
saying that the whole sports industry takes up, brings in so much revenue, but these guys aren't actually being paid as much as
the players should be getting more of a cut because they deserve it. They're bringing all that money in.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. The program so far.
Okay. So I definitely think the athletes or sportsmen are making too much money.
Right.
And I think now is something I consider too late to reverse, because it's difficult to change it now. But if we were to start everything all afresh, I think we should definitely train the athletes and the sportsmen to know that this is not going to be your job for life. So whatever you're doing, whatever you want to become, you have to know that at some point, it will end. So you have to have a backup plan.
Right.
And if you are going to play for 3 or 4 years and retire, then you have maybe 20 or 25 years ahead of you, and you have to have something doing after that. So they are definitely getting a lot of money, all because of what some people have said. The industries are also capitalizing on.
Okay, some good views. Let's see what the panel think of that. One question I'd like to ask, if football players are only playing for 3 or 4 years, what do they do for the rest of their lives? What do they do after that career? What do they fall back on?
A lot of pro athletes fall back into coaching.
Okay.
And that's an avenue to fall. A lot of them fall into businesses. And I think every NFL, NBA, part of their rookie, call it orientation, they educate them on other ways to, ways to spend their money while players, ways to invest in their money while they're playing, and what to do afterwards. And I think those are, once again, they should be educated and they should be given these avenues. I think that's good that they've started that, because there are some horror stories that they've milked everything away.
Yeah.
A few things I heard. I definitely agree sports is a business. I definitely agree with this gentleman's point that they're worth as much as somebody's willing to pay them. If you forget about sports, whatever job you work in, how much ever you pay me, no offense, I think I'm going to be underpaid. I'm going to want more money for what I put in, every day. One thing though, and we didn't really talk a lot about this, but there's a lot of socioeconomic issues associated with professional sports. The demographics of the people that make up professional sports, they tend to come from poorer communities. They tend to be, and I don't mean to be stereotypical, but a lesser educated. So the fundamentals there in terms of being able to take advantage of opportunities presented to them as they move up the ranks, as they go to a Division I college and get a free education, you know, it's not really stressed. And a lot of these guys, I mean, they're passed along because they can throw a football or dunk a basketball. They're passed along from grade to grade, even though they don't, I mean, you could probably attest to this, that they don't have the strong fundamentals educationally. So how are you expecting to take advantage of the opportunities, you know, growing up?
Maybe turning to you, I mean, the work that the Jamaat Ahmadiyya does obviously works as a voluntary organization, and I'm sure you've actually set up different sports initiatives in different local areas. And what's the response been to that?
It's been great. We've done multiple tournaments, especially the biggest one that we have, the Missouri International Sports Tournament that we've been holding for the last 7 years. It brings people from all over the country, even internationally, Europe, France, Belgium. All these countries participate in this. And it's a way to get everyone together, number one. And then number two, you build that competitive fire amongst one another. Everyone plays, has a good time, but at the end of the day, they go home as friends. There's no animosity towards one another, especially when you get together in a Jamaat function. So I think that's the great thing about, you know, Majlis Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya, that you're always brothers, above all.
Right, okay, let's turn to the audience again. We're talking about here about sports and its role socially as well, reaching out to other people, and what role do you think sports has in reaching out to people maybe from more poorer backgrounds as well?
Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani, Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, who actually was the founder of Majlis Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya, he encouraged Khuddam to play sports. He incorporated sports in Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya, and he said that a strong body produces a healthy mind, and that is enough to help the community and the Jamaat in many ways. So as you can see, even in the life history of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahmatullah, he used to play kabaddi, and he was a good player for squash and also tennis. So he was a great spiritual leader, right, and he is a role model for us, and we should look into that.
And one thing, I mean, like Hippie made the point about the fact that these contracts are all public. I mean, think about if you go to a job and everybody knew how much money you made. I mean, it's a level of scrutiny. Not saying we should sympathize with these multi-millionaires, but it's a level of scrutiny that we don't really have to deal with in our day-to-day life.
Yeah,
if everybody knew how much I made, you know, oh, he was late to work X amount of times,
right,
or he
right.
was, you know what I mean? Like, so it's everything is because of the age we live in with, you know, I know we've been bashing the media a lot, but, you know, it's this ultra information age. Everything is constantly updating. There's so much out there. You know, there's a different level of scrutiny in today's society that you know, that wasn't there.
Okay, just want to get some more points of view from the audience here as well. I can see a lot of hands raised up. Yeah, what would you like to say?
Yes, just building upon the comment this brother made, if you look at it in a religious viewpoint, sports is a very good way to propagate your religion. I know we haven't talked about religion that much, but if you think about it, by playing sports with the, you know, different religions and different people of different cultures, that's a really good avenue to propagate your religion.
It breaks down barriers, doesn't it?
Exactly. It breaks the barriers. You know, if anybody has a wrong notion of your particular religion, they see how you conduct yourselves while you play the game. They see, you know, this person is a very good person. Let me see why. What's motivating him to be this type of, you know, such a truthful person or such a, you know, like an honest player. So that's also a good way to, you know, propagate the faith, and, you know, it can bring people towards your faith if, you know, and go from there.
Okay,
so
fantastic. There's one other sort of moral aspect of sports I really want to touch on, and that's sort of gambling. Because what I found, especially here in the US, gambling is a big part of it. A lot of people, they don't just watch a game, you know, they put money on it as well. Obviously, as Muslims, we don't gamble, but there's other forms of it which are a lot more subtle. I mean, there's an upward trend of using fantasy leagues and stuff like that, and you actually can get money from them. You can actually win things from that. So what are sort of boundaries then? What advice can we give our youngsters?
It's a big part of our corporate environment, our business environment. March Madness is a big money-making, you know, month in college basketball season, where people pool play, and you know, a lot of people have the viewpoint where it's, you know, it's just $2. You know, I make picks, it's fun. My coworkers are doing it. It's a way, like you talked about, to assimilate into the culture and just the society. But I think Islam is real concrete, and any type of money going into a pot where you can earn potentially earn money out of it. It's considered gambling.
We're coming to the end of the program, but I just want to quickly get some more views from the audience. Wrapping up the whole discussion we've had today, what can you take from the discussion today, and how can we actually get that message out to youngsters around the whole country, even around the world who are watching this, about the importance of sports, the benefits of sports as well? Can we have some sort of final closing comment?
The takeaway from today's talk is really that we should exercise moderation in sports, because there's going to be a lot of groups or organizations or the media that are always going to take you away to a certain extreme, whether that's drugs or towards like the Wii system or the Xbox, whatever it is. So moderation in sports, but the goal should always be to excel in it and be the best.
Okay, fantastic. I know a lot of people wanted to add in some extra points. We're really running out of time. Panel members, just finally, what would be your closing remarks on the discussion that we've had today? What's the most important point that you want viewers to take away from today's show?
Personally, I'd say, more speaking to the parents, I think sports should be encouraged, but it starts in the family. It starts with the parents. Let's really push our children to play sports competitively in a teamwork environment. I think the morals that can be developed from sports are sometimes overlooked, and the negatives are highlighted. But teamwork, self-discipline, leadership, these are all things that as a coach I preach, I get my players to adapt to. I really see them at a young age develop from boys to men. And really, I feel like sports, and particularly basketball, is a metaphor for life. I'm really helping them develop and tackle other life challenges that they're going to face, how to persevere.
Okay, Kush, just briefly, how would you wrap up today's discussion?
One of the points somebody made, and I agree with 100%, that I think sports is a great venue to learn about other cultures, learn about other people, especially in this political climate where there's a lot of, polarizing opinions about various people in the world. I think, using sports as a way to, break down a lot of these barriers, a lot of cross-cultural interaction, learning about new people. I mean, it's great for the youth to start young and continue that. Just because you don't make it to the NBA or go play in college, you can continue to play and meet new people and interact with new people, as long as your body allows it. I think it's great.
All right, fantastic. And Hibby, will be your final remarks for today?
Sports, just like life, needs to be kept in perspective, especially when you're taking things to the extreme. Islam teaches us not to go to any extreme one way or another. And sports is the same way. If you find yourself watching sports all day and night, that's too much. So I think what the message is keep a balance, like someone said. Keep everything in perspective, and play sports. The benefits are well documented. There's no surprises. There's nothing that's out there that's a secret. Right. Sports should be played. Activities should be done, but keep it at a moderation level.
Okay, fantastic. I want to thank all of the panel members for your input in the discussion today. Thank you. And thanks to the audience as well. I know a lot of you traveled a long way to be here. It's fantastic to have you in the program. For people watching at home, don't forget you can put in your points of view as well. Our website is www.mta.tv/realtalk. You'll find videos up there as well, and you can add in your comments. You can email us, realtalk@mta.tv, and you can follow us on our Twitter as well. We're going to be here in the States for a couple of weeks, and we'll be filming some more programs, and I'm going to get some of the people here to come and present the programs as well, so it's well worth staying tuned and watching in the future. I hope you enjoyed the program today, and I hope you can join us next time again for more Real Talk. But until then, Assalamu alaikum.